Hi, my name is Deon Rebello, and this is the DCX Bullion Vault. Hi, Willem, how you doing?
Good and you, Dion.
Good. So it's been an interesting time. Again, what we heard about Trump's agenda with these global tariffs on the world, literally, is now really starting to take a massive effect within the markets. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like just about every time we get together, say it's been an interesting week, and yeah, I mean they're in place now apparently, and as you mentioned, the effects of it has been absolutely astronomical and not really for the better. So yeah, I'm not sure what the hope was to achieve with that, but it's certainly thrown a lot of the markets into complete and utter turmoil.
Well, especially within the US markets, I mean, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, I mean, they had massive drops over the last couple of days, equivalent to what happened to 2008. So there is a massive concern that recession is now imminent. I mean, within our own country, we are on the precipice, all that point of a recession.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the stock markets took an absolute battering. Um, it was just red all over the show, and I mean, gold along with it went down because obviously people are now selling off gold, trying to cover the losses from the stock market, and that obviously takes a hit. But what is interesting is how quickly gold rebounded from where it was to once again go and perch itself just above $3,000 an ounce.
Yeah, and again, that shows you exactly the conditions that we're in globally, that there's all this uncertainty, that the equity markets aren't looking great, they're not performing well. There's massive geopolitical issues throughout the world. And again, then Trump comes, or you call him the Orange Man, comes in and comes with these tariffs. And I think, as we've discussed in the former episode, that there's an issue to that because it has a ramification on the world.
It definitely does. I mean, and the worst part is it's not benefiting anybody. It literally benefits nobody. I mean, it's the same as saying I own a hardware store on the corner, you own a grocery store on the other corner. I come to your grocery store, I buy all my groceries there every month, and I'm spending 2, 3,000 rands in your grocery store. You come to my hardware store, you buy a hammer for 300 rand, and now I'm upset because I'm spending more money in your shop than in the you spending in mine. It's never going to balance out that way. They've got 300 odd million people. Let's say a country like South Africa has what, 62 million, round about there, I think. Obviously, we're going to buy a lot less stuff. We need a lot less stuff. You need a lot less food and sundries and whatever to maintain a family of two than a family of 13. So it's just the way things are. And to think that he can suddenly balance this out by slapping tariffs onto all of the countries, literally all the countries in the world. There are two islands that has zero human population, and he's taxing the penguins 10%. I mean, it's you have to just wonder what the logic is there.
It kind of takes me back to a thing I saw, and I'm trying to remember the exact words with it. It was on the show that Trevor Noah used to host in the States.
To
Um,
this Tonight Show, Daily
yeah, The
Show.
Daily Show. Yes.
Yeah.
And the original guy, he's back, taken over there, and he pretty much said it. And I'll find the quote, but again, it's interesting. He pretty much, as you're saying, it's like, uh, this is that, but we're going to do this, and it's completely contradictory. It doesn't serve anything or any actual purpose. Again, we've spoken. Yes, we understand the theory behind what he's doing is he wanted to stimulate the U.S. economy, but you've got an economy that's been relying on external supply for decades. To start to re-upboot that system to support what he's talking about is not going to be overnight. We're talking years upon years of infrastructural development that needs to be put in place before they could even realize any of that.
And I think that's one point that is completely missing is let's take Tesla on the one hand and BYD on the other hand. Both make electric cars. One is based in the US, one is based in China. And what's the difference between the two? Well, Tesla sources all of its products or all of its components. It builds its cars and it sells them on. BYD has a supply chain from when those materials come out of the ground all the way until it goes into their car. They've got that supply chain up and running. They're not relying on anybody else to bring anything in to actually build their cars. And that's the difference. You know, if we actually take a look at a Tesla, I mean, I don't have any figures on it, but I'm willing to bet that a great portion of the components that go into that car isn't made in the US. It's sourced from somewhere else. It's imported from China, from the EU, I don't know, Canada, Mexico. I don't know where this stuff comes from, but I can guarantee you that a large part of the supply chain is external to the US, while BYD is sitting with essentially the same type of product, except they've got the entire supply chain from start to finish. They've even got their own cargo ships with which they ship these cars out to the world. And that's the difference. To suddenly try and force that supply chain that, you know, China has been working on for years and decades, building that reliance on themselves, having everything they need right there, versus to suddenly try and do this within the space of a month through tariffs is futile.
Just to lighten things up, you know, we've spoken about it, and I'm looking at our producer to see we got to throw in some F1 just to, and I want to get back onto the gold, but it's interesting. I mean, it was Japan Grand Prix.
One of my favorite tracks, yeah.
Yep. Verstappen set probably one of the best qualifying lap ever, and got the record in the same on the same lap. And then went to dominate that race completely, where the McLaren sat in 1, 2, and 3, and just weren't able to ever get anywhere close to him.
Yeah, I mean, we know that it's a difficult track to overtake on, but still the performance difference between the McLaren and the Red Bull, I mean, Verstappen, I think, just showed why he's a 4-time world champion. It's not all down to the Red Bull.
Yeah, and again, I think it still kind of opens the season up for a lot of excitement. I think we're going to have close racing, and ultimately that's what you want.
Yeah, definitely. It does show us that this is by no means a foregone conclusion. It's not like in past years where, okay, that man is sitting in that car, he's going to win the championship. You know, everybody thought, Norris in the McLaren, it's a done deal. Like, you know, 2 years ago, Verstappen in the Red Bull, it's a done deal. I don't think we're going to see that this year.
Well, that's good. And again, I know that for Red Bull, that's the last time that they will be utilizing a Honda engine in Japan. And what was interesting is Verstappen actually discussed, you know, of course, he's contracted with Red Bull for still a long period, but he does have an exit clause based on performance. And with Lawrence Stroll, who owns Aston Martin, taking on Honda as the next engine provider, I kind of think, based on Verstappen's comments, saying that's not probably the last time, hopefully not the last time, that he will be driving a Honda-driven vehicle.
Yeah, let's face it, Lawrence is chucking buckets of money at that team. He's just got the best designer in the world signed to him. Of course, he's going to want the best driver. And I think Verstappen's reached a point where if he finds the right offer, he'll go.
Yeah, and again, that's just a little bit of a diversion to what we were discussing, but we can tie that to the markets, to gold, to silver. Any way you can see?
Well, as you know, we've been looking at gold a lot, but what about the actual platinum and silver, you know? Now, silver and platinum especially, is heavily tied to the markets. It's an industrial metal, and that's why sometimes when you see gold going up, then platinum is a little bit more erratic, and silver is a little bit more erratic. You know, they don't always follow the same paths, and the main reason for that is because platinum and silver are industrial metals, and platinum especially is tied very closely to the automobile sector. And so whenever there's a recession, whenever the markets are down, whenever there's a depression, you know, platinum tends to be in less demand because the automobile sector is down. They're selling less cars, and then there's less of a demand for platinum. And as a result, platinum sort of trends down while gold would trend up because people are looking for safe haven investment. And silver is also impacted, but silver's scope is just a lot larger. You know, solar, green energy movement, especially silver is very closely tied to that, and also in the EV sector. You know, a lot electric vehicles rely a lot on silver, and so when the markets take a bit of a downturn, you probably see silver also taking a bit of a dip because there's less demand for products, there's less demand for goods that they use the silver to manufacture. The demand for silver goes down, and as a result, the price does dip.
So the interesting thing with that, Willem, is with silver, and we've spoken at length about this also, is the supply versus the demand of silver has been running at a deficit for the last 3 years. The demand within the photovoltaic market, your solar panels and so on, has been so high that it's been growing at about 20% per annum. So even though silver has taken a little bit of a knockback down into the low 30s dollars per ounce.
I think it actually dipped below 30.
And then it pulled back up and is again. But what that also, and I'm going to go on to this next, is it shows the resilience of where the pricing of silver is right now and where it potentially can go.
Definitely. I mean, if we look at silver, it crossed 100-to-1 gold-silver ratio, which is, according to just about everybody, extremely strong signals to buy. Silver is massively undervalued. It is so far away from that 70% that this would be the opportune time to buy silver. And as you said, there's the deficit each and every year, and it's only a matter of time before all of these things catch up to each other, and we'll see the price of silver actually really taking off. And as you said, it's actually been quite resilient. Gold has been quite resilient. Platinum has been sort of just there and thereabout. It's actually been very quiet, which makes you think. But as I said, 100-to-1 silver ratio. I can't remember. I've got the statistic somewhere, but it was years ago, decades ago, that we last saw that. And
well, in March of 2020 is when it went to over 100.
Of course, yes.
But that again was basically a time of when we were going into COVID. There was massive unexpected. People didn't know what was going to happen.
Definitely, it was extreme circumstances.
Yeah.
I think probably as or even more extreme than it is now. I mean, we're sitting right now today on a point where I don't think anybody knows what's going on anymore, what's going to happen tomorrow, what the market is going to do. And I think 2020 was probably worse just due to everything grinding to a halt. People weren't working, factories weren't producing, literally everything was at an absolute halt, and that took its toll. And as you said, that drove silver to the 100-to-1 ratio, and it took a few years, but we're back there. However, this time the price points are quite different.
Yeah, and again, I just want to draw back to the global markets, and of course we've just mentioned COVID, and I'd mentioned that the daily that guy, his name's John Stewart.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is he spoke of, like, in 2020 there was this virus that was found in Wuhan, and then of course it spread through the world, and he compares that with the recklessness and the wrongness of what Trump is doing. Firstly, America is the richest country in the world. Per capita, they are wealthy. Most people live very good, comfortable lives in percentage. And he says to go and do the measures that he's done, it's like literally going and standing in front of a press thing. You've gone and got your virus in a container, and you literally open it and blow it out to everybody and say, well, there you go. And it's kind of like interesting that he aligns that, but it's that kind of craziness of where we are right.
Yeah, Jon Stewart is not a big fan of Donald Trump to start off with, and he's not scared to say what he feels. So, yeah, he's got some interesting takes on a lot of these things. But yeah, it's you know we look at all these tariffs, we look at what's going on, and you really have to just sit and you have to think who is actually benefiting from this. And when they ask him who is benefiting from this, it's the same old answer we usually get. Oh, a lot of people, great people, beautiful people.
Yeah.
And he asks for more specifics, and there's none. So essentially he's sitting there, and I think this is just a display of power, a display of dominance. Look what I can do. And the problem is not everybody's taking their medicine, as he calls it.
Yeah, and again, that's going to have the effect it has on the markets. And again, this is leaning towards a recession, a possible depression, because these kind of measures cause extreme moves. And we've spoken at length about this, that the American economy in general, with the S&P 500 as the barometer of that market, is overvalued, severely overvalued. In times during COVID, where it showed actual growth, and again, that was based on the quantitative easing that companies were receiving. So they were receiving money, which created this bubble that is effectively sitting under that American economy. Something has to change and something has to give. And I think personally, we are now going towards a period where there could be a massive drop into a prolonged recession or even more drastic a depression.
It's far from over. It's as simple as that, because the White House is singing their own praises that 70 countries have approached us desperately wanting to talk, and oh, China is desperate to have talks and negotiate.
That's why they
And
just
the,
went and increased their own
and in the
tariffs to the
meantime,
US.
China has actually said, we will fight to the bitter end. You've put tariffs on us, we're putting tariffs on you.
Yeah.
And this is the difference that I was talking about earlier. America is very reliant on external supply chains. China has built those supply chains for themselves. Who's going to come out worse in this fight? If they isolate themselves from the other countries. And the difference is China isn't isolating themselves from the world. They're isolating themselves from the US, maybe, but not from the world. The US, Trump, has upset the entire world, literally, even the penguins on the islands.
It's going to be amazing. All the words he uses.
Yeah.
So, another thing. If we go and look at the Rand dollar. Now, from last week or from the beginning of April, we were sitting around 18.30, 18.40. We've literally lost a Rand to the dollar. We're now solidly into the mid 19s. So I've always said this. And again, what I wanted to chat about now is, yes, gold from last week to this week, it broke $100,000 a kilogram. It's gone under $100,000 a kilogram right now and sitting about $97,000 per kilo. Or in ounce terms, it broke about $3,300 and is now around $3,040 an ounce. So with that decrease, now the important message here, more importantly for a lot of our people that are watching from or listening to this via South Africa or in emerging economy, where generally those currencies are devaluing to the dollar, losing ground on the dollar. What would be the difference now? So from last week, where it was very, very strong, and there's been this pullback on the metal, and yet there's been a loss in value of the rand to the dollar. If you were holding gold in rands, where would your gold be right now?
So I'm going to what we do is we work the daily price lock that we have in rands per gram. Now, if I look at last year, just before, or not last year, last month, just before this amazing rally of gold, If we take a look at that, gold was sitting at about 1,945 rands per gram.
Yeah.
It picked up and it peaked at 1,990 rands per gram. That was the absolute peak. This was the day that it set the all-time high. It was 1,990 rands per gram. So now we've had that pullback, and well, there's a few reasons for it. Firstly, as we mentioned, we've been expecting that pullback. It has to happen sometime. Something's got to give. It can't just continue on this upward trend forever. And yes, something gave. It took a lot of external factors to finally break that momentum, and gold dropped to below 3,000 once again. But it recovered quite quickly. It climbed back up to above 3,000 quite quickly. And the other factor for that pullback was, of course, the tariffs, the stock market tanking, basically. I mean, there's no other word for it. We saw, I think, from last month to this month, we saw the S&P dive 12%, while gold has gone down, I think, 6%. So if you take it just over the last month, it might look like gold has lost a lot of value, but it hasn't actually. It hit that all-time high. It had its pullback, and it's not looking as impressive as 3,100 and something dollars an ounce, but it is still extremely strong. So despite all of that, if we look, the all-time high was 1990. We've had gold lose quite a significant bit of value, yet it's still sitting at 1,980 rands per gram. So that's a loss of 10 rands per gram, which is 50 US cents per gram if you convert it.
Yeah.
And that is what is happening. That is the power of currency devaluation.
So again, and there's a couple of things I just want to also unpack there is we talk about gold dropping below the $3,000 mark, which is now clearly the bottom resistant line that gold is sitting on, because clearly it dipped below it and it pulled straight back above it. Same with silver, around $30, it dipped below, then pulled right back above it. So clearly that's that bottom resistant line it's pushing. Of course, the top resistant line for gold was over $3,300 an ounce. And it's going to stay in that band now for a little bit of time. Traditionally, as we move into the Northern Hemisphere summer towards July, August, September, is the time where we've actually seen some big moves for precious metals. And I do foresee that based on the current conditions, we are by no means, that gold's going to now decline. I think this is going to be a little bit of a lateral period to rebuild. It's almost like that winding in of a spring, and you build, pull, and you create all that tension. And of course, then it releases, and then we'll go back to those higher values.
Definitely. I mean, I think the top analyst for Standard Chartered Bank has just revised their outlook for gold to 3,300 an ounce. I mean, so institutional investors, all of these top analysts still think that $3,300 is a realistic target for, or a realistic outlook for this year. And as you mentioned, towards the end of the year is usually where it starts gaining a bit of momentum. I mean, in previous years, if I go back, every time we've seen new record highs, it's usually come towards the end of the year. And to have had the movement that we've had already in the first quarter of 2025, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and again, I think, I know, based on the current conditions, it's by no means that this is the end of the run. There's still a lot to go. And in fact, I mean, we at some stage, and maybe we'll do it towards the end of this quarter, which so probably around June, where we'll actually re-look at the evaluation of what we projected and where it should go. But realistically, I think 3,300 is kind of middle of the road in my mind.
It's what a lot of the institutions are actually based, or the level that they're putting it at. Sorry.
No.
It's where a lot of the institutions are putting their projections. I think maybe they just trying to be a bit more conservative. If they go and predict 3,500 and it gets nowhere near that, they're going to look like clowns. So I think they're careful about their predictions. They'd rather go under, and when they see, okay, well, that's no longer looking like the bottom or the top line, then they're happy to revise it, because they can always say, things have changed. Look at how the markets have changed and factors. So yeah, I think they are being conservative, and 3,300 is a very realistic target, but there's probably room for it to go above that.
Absolutely. And again, with the gold silver ratio being as just under 100 to 1 right now, I think it's about 99.65 to be exact. But we're still sitting there. And again, that's that elastic band where you pull it out and you create that tension. And the gold silver ratio has to narrow. That in turn, and we've spoken about this in one of the previous episodes, means that we will see a definite growth in silver in relation to gold.
Yeah, silver is a tricky one. It tends to play the long game a bit more than gold. Gold sees big movements sometimes over short periods, like over the past 3 months up until April. It's gone up, I think, 450 odd dollars from where it started the year to where it hit the peak. And I mean, that's insane. That's like 20% round about there.
Yeah.
Or well, probably not 20, but close enough to 20 to actually say just wow. While silver, I think its best days are ahead of it. It's incredibly undervalued at the moment. We're running the deficit on production, and demand is skyrocketing, especially with green technology demands, solar panels, electric vehicles, etc., etc., etc. We talk about these things to ad nauseum, but it is something that you need to keep in mind. It's something that you need to consider. And there's this demand for silver, there's a supply deficit. Something's got to give some way. And right now it's extremely undervalued, which is probably why silver is looking at a massive rally somewhere pretty close.
I think you're spot on. And again, I think this story still will play itself out. And I think one of the big features is how the US conducts its foreign policy, be it through tariffs or geopolitical related issues. And again, those are two hot potatoes that they're trying to juggle whilst the economy is really under massive pressure. If we then take a step away from that global economy and we sit now into our local South African economy, there are concerns. We've definitely gone through one quarter in decline. So if we hit this quarter, which is expected, it is unofficial that we are in a recession.
Yeah, and I mean, with the rand taking a knock as it has, with the US cutting aid to South Africa, we losing billions, trillions of rands. And yes, there's talks that the EU will pick up the slack, or will take up the funding that the US has now cut, but that's not going to happen overnight, and we're going to go through a period of struggle where the country is going to struggle financially. South Africa Incorporated is in a cash flow problem. We've got massive loans that we need to pay off, and we need to pay them off in US dollar. The rand goes up to 19.40 a dollar. That loan becomes that much more expensive.
And the other thing is, and you spoke about it with the US economy, that it's all well and fine to create these tariffs, and conceptually the idea is to stimulate the local market. But again, South Africa has created a lot of channels into the US market of delivery of vehicles, of produce across the board. And we've had the benefit of the AGOA agreement, which allowed us to have literally no tariffs added to any of our products going into the States. Now suddenly they're saying that 25 or 30% that's going to be applying to it. Now suddenly it becomes uneconomical. You talk of Europe saying, "Yeah, we will take it up," in China and so on, but you need to reestablish new pathways to market, and that again doesn't happen overnight. And the big problem South Africa has is we don't have time.
That is true. That is unfortunately very true. We are on a knife's edge. We've got massive debt. GDP isn't what it needs to be.
0.4%.
Yeah, it's just to say it's not what it needs to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of our biggest exports is actually automobiles. And now with 25% added to every car that goes into America, I'm interested to see how this plays out. Because on the one hand, you know, it's obviously to discourage people from buying cars from other countries. But on the other hand, are you just going to suddenly now buy something else that you really don't want because the other thing has become more expensive? Or are you just going to say, forget about it? I'm just going to drive what I have a little bit longer, see where this goes. I mean, somebody who's looking to buy a Mercedes isn't going to suddenly buy a Ford F-150 now because the Mercedes has become 25% more expensive. It's not what they're after. It's not what they want. And I think that's a point that they're missing with the vehicle tariffs. America produces, let's face it, big pickup trucks for the American. And then the Americans who actually want to buy the motor cars that are being imported isn't going to buy that. And that's the difference. So what I foresee is they're just not going to buy cars.
Well, what's interesting, and you raised that, and we've seen it within our local automotive market, where over the last probably 5 years, there's been a massive drive from China to bring in a whole range of different vehicles at price points far better than their German counterparts, any of the other countries that would be supplying vehicles. And what's interesting is people are choosing to go with the cheaper vehicles, gives you similar specs, if not better specs, better, your aftermarket plan, that maintenance plan, and so on. But here, there's been that definite shift. A person's not going to want to drive a Mercedes that's costing so much more, where they can drive a vehicle that's as from all the bits and bobs in it is equivalent in many ways. Yes, we also have an ego problem in this country where there are people that will drive a Mercedes or will drive a BMW because it is the car to drive from an ego perspective. But the average man in the street, it's clear that they are choosing the cheaper vehicles with the pretty much a good solid background as far as technology and how they're looking and feeling. I mean, I always think of when Hyundai first came into the country, and the original Hyundais were terrible. I mean, they were boxes, they had no design, the technology wasn't great, and then you see where they are now, and where South Korea went producing very third world vehicles to literally competing with the best manufacturers in the world.
And it's a similar thing with China. I remember the first time the Cherry QQ came into the country, and it was basically a 2-year-old Chevy Spark.
Yes.
And it was a horrible little crap box. Now, I'm considering buying a new vehicle, and I'm looking at the Cherry Tiggo 4 Pro, and I'm going, that is phenomenal. And it was in such a short space of time. That's the scary thing. And here's the difference once again, you're talking about these Chinese vehicles coming in at a lower price point with specs that equal or surpass their German counterparts or their European counterparts. And once again, the reason why they are able to do that is because Chery or BYD or whoever owns everything from the mines that are being utilized to make iron to build their cars right through to the ships bringing it to our ports. Everything is included in that vehicle price. There's nothing extra for transport. There's nothing extra that goes to external supply chains. And that is the thing that China has managed to build. And this is going to sound weird, but America wants to be like China.
It's a bit late.
They want to be like China. They want that capacity. They want that production line. Everything being built, made in America. And now they expect to do it suddenly overnight.
Well, I think there's this belief within the States of the heyday of American automobile, where Detroit was like the hub of automotive manufacturing in the world, and they were producing millions of vehicles per annum through that big central part of America. And that died out over the decades, and we've spoken about the degradation of infrastructure and so on. But again, it's idealistic. It's not realistic for them to even consider to kind of do a reverse on where they are.
No, definitely not. And I mean, it's sometimes you have to acknowledge who you are in the world, where you fit into the chain, and how you play with others. And they're not simply not willing to do that right at the moment. You know, they are reliant on external trading partners, yet the Trump administration doesn't want them to be. Now, I understand wanting to bring back manufacturing, wanting to bring back the jobs, wanting to stimulate the economy from within. I understand that, but it's not something that you just simply bash into existence with a blunt object, which is what they're trying to do. You know, you need people that are trained to do those jobs. You need facilities that can do those jobs. You need the supply chains from the raw materials needed to produce something all the way to the finished product. And in many cases, they don't have those raw materials available to them.
And their skills, as far as what an average American would earn per hour, is a far different in relation to what the same qualified Chinese employee would earn.
Definitely. And I mean, we know that the cost of living in America is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, you look at hiring a one bedroom or studio apartment in Manhattan, you know, it's if you actually convert it, you can buy like a 5, 6 million rand house in South Africa for the price of rent for a one bedroom studio apartment. And that's the crazy thing, you know, our cost of living over here in South Africa is quite low. If you look at UK, if you look at America, it's pretty pricey to survive there. Food is expensive, rent is expensive. Literally everything costs thousands more or multitudes more than what it costs here. And that is why a country like South Africa, I'm not saying we're doing it, but just as an illustration, that is why a country like South Africa, who can pay somebody 30,000 rand a month and to produce something, if you convert that back, I mean, we're sitting at what now? 20, let's call it 20 rand to the dollar. So you're looking at, I don't know, $1,500 a month,
Yeah.
the equivalent. That doesn't cover your rent in America. And yet we are able to live pretty well, you know, not fabulously, but pretty well on that salary. While in America, you're not going to be able to cover your rent and buy food.
And okay, you've really highlighted a big thing for me, which is now we talk South African economy. We, if we see how government has treated industry, we've had all of our major manufacturers moving offshore, going into China, the likes of Creepy Crawley, the likes of KDAC, and so on. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of different companies that have left this country, manufacturing concerns, that have chosen to leave because of not the fact that the wages are too low. I think, and I do believe this, and I know of stories in South Africa where staff are paid very good salaries, they are producing and they're exporting to the world and actually doing exceptionally well. And yet as a government, that's not being promoted. In fact, it gets hindered. And those kind of things is what's going to stimulate an economy. And yet, if you look over the last 20 years, if you see hotspots like Vanderbijl Park, which was a massive iron ore or a big manufacturing area within the Highveld, within the Witwatersrand, how it's just literally become an empty factory area.
Definitely. I mean, South Africa is rated as one of the most difficult countries in the world to do business in. And until something changes on that front, we're going to continue to struggle.
Yeah.
As you said, why isn't the success of these companies being highlighted? Why isn't other companies actively being invited? Why isn't that why aren't they making it easier for these companies? You look at Mauritius, who is making it as easy as possible for countries from other countries to open accounts, to open a business, to get licenses, etc., etc., and they're booming. And that's I think that's the shift that we're going to need to get off this cliff that we're standing on at the moment.
And yes, I think, in closing, it's something that we need to consider. And I think maybe in our next episode, let's unpack that South African economy. I mean, our rail infrastructure is gone. Most of the transport that would have been via rails now by road. If anyone has ever traveled the N3 from Johannesburg to Durban on a Friday or Sunday evening, you will know and you will experience truck lines of kilometers long going through Van Rieman's. And I was unfortunate the one time coming back whilst it was a thunderstorm, and it was terrifying. These massive trucks moving through those mountains, and kilometers lines of these trucks moving. And again, that's a problem. Again, there's now a whole system has been developed with logistics and trucking and so on, which is feeding people, but is it actually stimulating the economy by having effective rail infrastructure and so on? But I think let's unpack that in the next episode.
Yeah, I think that's a topic for another day.
Willem, just in closing, and again, thanks for your time. Just let the people know what we'd like from them.
If you enjoyed the episode, hit the like button. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.
Great, thanks. Take care, Willem. Bye-bye.
Cheers.